Thank you very much, Mr. President. We have 2 interviews this evening. Both of them are for the Planning Board with terms to expire April 15th, 2025. We have Dean Valier and we have Jason Paré. So what I will do is we'll introduce Attorney Valier first. And Attorney Valier, what I'd like you to do is, hello, first of all. Hello, nice to have you here. Too bad we can't have you face to face, but this is the way we've been conducting business for a while, and unfortunately, we're getting used to it. I don't think that's a good thing, but
right.
So what we do here, Attorney Valier, is have you introduce yourself to. Although I believe that many members, if not all members of the City Council, are familiar with you. But introduce yourself to the council and the public, and then just give us a little bit of your background. I mean, we do have your resume, but if you could just speak about your background, and then your intentions for joining the planning board and what you feel as though you can contribute to the board. So I will hand it over to you at this time.
Okay, thank you, Gail. Dean Valier. I'm a practicing attorney in Leominster. Been in solo practice, or at first with my dad, for 37 years in Leominster. I have an office up in North Leominster out of my home. I was asked if I was interested in joining the planning board, and for years I've been trying to find a way or get something back to the city. This is my hometown, and I thought that the planning board would be a good way to contribute my talents. I've been concentrating in the law, domestic relations, probate, and real estate. So I have some real estate background, which I think would be helpful in the position.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just looking forward to being able to contribute something to the city.
Right, and certainly, as you said, the real estate experience over all these years, knowing the city of Leominster and how it's grown and its needs and different people that have come to you, with their concerns, will be very helpful, to the board. So
I've appeared before the planning board on behalf of a client before, so.
That's right,
I understand a little bit on how it works,
Yep, I'm sure you have. And I understand that you actually attended a meeting as a temporary member.
I did, last Monday, my first meeting. So, I mean, there's a learning curve to this, ordinances and zoning bylaws and things, zoning ordinances. I mean, I have to get up to speed on a lot of this, but I've already taken some classes online and attended some seminars. And I've got one this week that I'll be signing up for as well.
Okay. All right. Yeah. When I watch the planning board or go to the planning board, I'm always in awe of what the members need to know, because there are so many laws and regulations, and then once you get to know them, I'm sure they start to change. So, like you said, it's constant. It's like anything else, right? Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, I'm sure you're used to that. So, all right. So that's great. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to turn you. If Councilor Frida is on the line, she's another member of the Ways and Means Committee that will be asking you questions.
Okay.
Councilor Frida? No, Caitlin, we don't have Councilor Frida.
I have 2 unnamed callers, but I haven't heard from Claire yet.
Okay. So I will turn you over then to Councilor Dombrowski.
Hey,
Hi,
Dean,
John.
how are you?
Good, John. How are you?
I'm well. I don't have any questions, Councilor Feckley. I just want to say how appreciative I am that Dean has volunteered to do this. I think he's going to be an excellent addition to that board, and can't thank him enough.
Thank you, John.
And that's pretty much it. Yeah.
Thank you. Any other counselor have any questions or comments for Attorney Valier?
Yes, Councilor Feckley. This is Mark Bedanza. I've known Dean as a colleague, but even long before, in fact, even before we were lawyers, because we grew up 2 houses away from each other.
We did.
You might not want to go that far back.
So, no, it's all positive. Dean's a great person and a good lawyer, and we're very fortunate to have him volunteer his services for the planning board, and I'm very supportive of the mayor's nomination, and I'm glad he's going to be with us.
Thank you, Mark.
Very good.
You're welcome.
Very good. Any other counselors have any
Yes,
questions or
Councilor
comments?
Frida, Councilor David Cormier.
Oh, go right ahead, Councilor Cormier.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Valier, for volunteering for our planning board. Obviously, it's one of the definitely a more high-profile board. Very busy and makes big decisions for the city that can affect a lot of people, and the decisions sometimes are forever, really, with what we do and how we plan. I guess one of the questions I have is, have you had a chance to review the subdivision regulations yet?
I have the book here, and I have done some reading, but like I said, you have to come up to speed on a lot of these items.
Right. No, I understand, and there is a lot to it, and it can be pretty dry. I've spent a lot of time over the past year or two becoming a little bit more familiar myself. But I think it's, as I'm sure you know, when anybody is involved in any type of a public position, we all have a role, and I think it's important that we all our role, and certainly being familiar with, regulations such as subdivision regulations and whatnot, help us all in the role that we play, to understand what our part is and stuff. And I'm sure that being an attorney, that you will do very well with that kind of stuff and doing that kind of research and whatnot. And I think you'll be a good asset to the planning board. So I just want to, thank you for volunteering and wish you all the best. And I'm sure there'll be some issue that will be coming up, and you'll be seeing my face hopefully when we're back to normal, or hearing my voice when we're on the phone. And it'll be fun to watch and see how the new members play in and whatnot. So best of luck to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor Cormier. Any other counselor? Say that again. Is this Councilor Frida?
It is Councilor Frida. I had trouble getting in for some reason, so I apologize.
Okay.
But
Go right ahead, Councilor Frida. We're interviewing Attorney Valier. So go right ahead with your comments or questions.
Okay, I'm not sure what anybody else has said already, but I've known Dean a long
Nothing
time.
good, Claire.
And I'm sorry.
Nothing good.
All right, I was going to say something good, but if you want me to do something different, I can do that. No, I was just going to add, there is sometimes, there's this thought that attorneys automatically know what's going on. If they're not land attorneys or they're not bank attorneys that deal with mortgages and zoning issues, then sometimes it's not quite as easy. But I know you've dealt with a lot of that, and I think it's great that you have an opportunity to be on the planning board, and I fully support you. And I apologize for coming in late here.
That's okay. Thank you very much. And then I understand I still have a big learning curve, and as I explained, I've already taken some online classes and plan to take more.
That's more than a lot of people have done going on our boards and commissions, so that says a lot. Good for you.
Okay. All set, Councilor Frida?
I am. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. Any other counselors have any comments or questions for Attorney Valier? Counselor Feckley, this is Counselor Shalfo Zephyr. Go right ahead, Counselor Shalfo Zephyr. I just wanted to tell Attorney Valier that I certainly appreciate very much his commitment. The planning board, decisions that come out of the planning board impact people in their homes, and they're significant, very significant decisions that come out, and it is a time-consuming, as I'm sure that you already are starting to understand, just looking at the subdivision rules and things. So I just want to say thank you. It's a significant contribution that you're making to the city of Leominster as a volunteer on the planning board. So, and bringing your expertise, your legal expertise, is certainly, it's a big bonus. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay, any other counselors? Okay, all right. Attorney Valier, thank you very much for coming to our virtual interview. And we appreciate very much your willingness to volunteer. I know that this is something that you've done for decades here in North Leominster, working with North Leominster Little League and, you know, many other organizations throughout the city. So we really appreciate it. And we will be taking up the matter of these appointments later on in the meeting.
Okay, thank you very much,
very,
Gail.
very much.
All righty.
You're
Thanks,
welcome.
everybody.
It's nice,
All righty. Good night.
nice speaking with you. Okay, our next interview is with Jason Pare, again, to the position of Planning Board, term to expire April 15th, 2025. Is Mr. Pare on the line?
Hi, I'm here. Hi, Councilor Feckley. Hello, Councilor.
How are
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm great, thank you. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. So you were listening, I believe, to Attorney Valier's interview, so you kind of know what we're doing here. We are interviewing you for this position as a committee, and then the council will chime in with their questions and comments. Also, the public will have the access to, you know, listen to this interview as well. So what we would like you to do is introduce yourself to us and the public. Give us a little bit of your background, your professional background, as well as your volunteer background. I know that we do have a volunteer resume. And, you know, what you feel as though you can contribute to the planning board, and your, you know, why you are interested in joining the planning board, which, for taking the words from Councilor Shalfo Zephyr, which is, of course, a significant contribution to the community. So I will hand that over to you, and we'll take it from there.
Thank you, Councilor. Okay, so my name is Jason Pare. I've been a resident of Leominster here for about 25, 30 years. I'm a local boy, born and raised in Fitchburg. I attended St. Bernard's High School, Fitchburg State College, stayed home, stuck around. I'm a software application support engineer. I've been doing that for about 25 years. I'm always looking for an opportunity to make a positive contribution to our community. I've had conversations to that effect with the mayor. You know, I let him know on more than one occasion that I'm eager to help out and willing wherever he can use me. And when I found out the opportunity came around, I was excited to throw my hat in the ring. Let's see, in terms of what I can contribute directly to the planning board, I don't have direct experience in real estate, but I have a wife who's worked in real estate law for about 25 years. So my exposure there is through osmosis. But I'm somewhat familiar with the ins and outs. I'm comfortable and familiar with the GIS mapping that the city uses.
Okay.
And I've been bringing myself up to speed on the city ordinances. We've had our first planning board meeting, and I get a little taste of what's to come.
Right. How did you like it?
It was exciting. It was, everything is strange in this post-pandemic world, having to
Right.
work over the phone, but I think it was productive. I was excited to meet the board members. Everyone's nice. Active conversation. Yeah.
Okay. All right. And you said that you received a degree from Fitchburg State
That's
College.
correct.
What was that degree? What was that degree in, Jason?
My degree was actually in English communications.
Okay.
When I started in IT, I actually started as a technical writer. From there, I
Okay.
worked my way into quality assurance and testing, and then finally into support engineering, which I've been doing for, I don't know, approaching 10 years, I guess.
Okay. Okay. All right. I am a big believer in osmosis. So, I take that as, maybe not direct experience, but I understand that when you're living with somebody that is very involved with their profession, you can't help it. So I appreciate that comment. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I am going to hand you over to Councilor Frida, who is the second member of our committee.
Hi, Jason. How are you?
Hi, Counselor. I'm great, thank you.
Good,
How are you?
Good.
Good.
I can't complain, except that it took me a while to get on the line tonight, but that's technology, which I don't have. So I understand how experience is good in one thing and other things you have to learn. You had an experience Monday night, you said, with the planning board already?
That's correct. Yep.
Yeah.
Yes, last Monday.
I
That's right.
didn't see the agenda. Was it anything controversial, or was it pretty much run-of-the-mill planning?
The thing that became apparent to me is the backlog of ordinances that we're having to deal with. I guess there are a lot of new additions and modifications that are being made to the ordinance book. The one that's currently available is outdated, and they're working on getting an updated ordinance manual available to the public. That seems to be the major undertaking right now.
It's pretty much ongoing, I guess.
Yeah.
I really don't have a whole lot of questions. I mean, I think I know you a little bit, and it's a learning curve. I mean, it's clear that it's a learning curve, and anybody who wants to learn it can learn it. And if you're volunteering your time, obviously you care about doing it. So I'm pretty confident that that's the direction you'll go in, and I wish you luck.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Councilor Frida. Councilor Dombrowski.
Thank you. I don't have any questions for Jason. I know he volunteers a lot. I know he's a hard worker. I want to thank him for putting his hat in the ring. And it's a difficult board, but I'm confident he's going to do really well. And I want to wish him all the luck in the world.
Thank you, Counselor.
Thank you, Councilor Dombrowski. Any other councilors have any questions or comments for Jason Paré?
Councilor Feckley, Mark Bedanza. I just want to
Right
thank
ahead,
Jason for his willingness to serve in the important capacity as a planning board member, and I'm sure he'll do a good job and work hard and develop experience, and the city will benefit from his good efforts. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilor Feckley, it's Councilor Cormier.
Go right ahead, Councilor Cormier.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Jason, for volunteering. It's good to see people that are willing to step up and try to help out in the community. The same question that I asked the previous nominee. Have you had a chance to review things like the subdivision regulations?
Yes, sir. I've just started coming up to speed. Like I said, we had our first planning board meeting. I'm starting to review the new ordinances, and I'm trying to get a handle on, you know, the new changes coming up. Obviously, there's a lot to digest.
Also, I know that, there are some courses out there that can be taken as well, and, I would just encourage you to, take those if you have the opportunity, and, I think that's a good thing. There certainly is a lot to learn and understand, but I do very, very well, and I'm happy to support you, and, I wish you all the best. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor Cormier. So I did attend a 2-day planning conference of the, what was it, the Southern New England planning board conferences. That was last week, and I also took my code of ethics.
Your ethics.
Training, yes, ma'am. So I am starting to put the work in, do the book work. Just want to throw that in.
Good. And I'm sure that there'll be, many more things to come. You'll be able to, many more resources that you'll be able to use to, make yourself better at what you do.
Sure.
Being a member. And I wish you all the best. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor.
Okay, any other counselors? Counselor Feckley? Yes. Go right ahead, Counselor Shalfo-Zephyr.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Jason, for volunteering and for jumping right in. If you've been to a planning board conference and if you've been to one of the meetings already, you're that much more ahead of the game. And I'm sure that you understand that it's a lot of work and, certainly can be a challenge. But again, it's just a very, very important board in the city of Leominster and the impact it can potentially have on, homeowners and neighborhoods. It's just very, very important. So I just want to say thank you. It's going to be a lot of work and a lot of your time, but it's a very important volunteer commitment that you're making. And I just want to say thank you.
Thank you, Councilor.
Thank you. Any other counselors? Okay, Jason, thank you very much for coming, being on the line this evening and being interviewed for this position. I do want to mention one thing that you said, that the ordinance code book needs some work, needs some rewriting. So I'm wondering if you somehow could get together with the city clerk and see if you could utilize your technical writing skills that you learned at Fitchburg State University and help out with that a little bit. So you
Yes,
could
ma'am.
maybe look into
I'm happy
that.
to. Yes,
Yep,
ma'am.
that'd
I've already
be great.
I've already reached out to the greater planning board and let them know, if there's anything I can do to help them in that
Yep.
regard, in terms of computer stuff. I'm happy to help.
Right. Good. Okay. So thank you very much again. And like I said, we will be taking up the matter of these appointments later on in the meeting. So thank you for your volunteerism and have a good evening.
Thank you, Councilor. Thanks for talking to me.
You're welcome.
Good night.
Mr. President, the interviews have concluded.
Very good, Counselor. As our next item is 17-21, the Fraticelli matter, and as I've recused myself, Madam Vice President, I'm going to let you commence or recommence the hearing on 17-21.
Okay. Thank you very much. The matter of 17-21 is referred to the Chairman of Legal Affairs.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. Petition 17-21. Stephen Fraticelli of Fraticelli Oil Company, Inc. Request to amend flammable liquids license from 335,000 gallons to 575,000 gallons of flammable liquids at 239 Litchfield Street. This is a continuation of a public hearing. I understand there's some people on the line that will be speaking or ask questions at this hearing. I think it might be appropriate if everybody could just identify themselves right now, if that would be good.
Steve Fraticelli, Fraticelli Oil.
Bob Seppi with MPE, representing Fraticelli Oil.
Troy Phillips with Hall Traffic Equipment, representing Fraticelli Oil.
I thought there was an attorney present. Mr. Fraticelli, did I hear that wrong?
No, there was an attorney present. I'm not sure if he's online yet.
Oh, okay.
Is that Mr.
All right,
Foley?
well, he does.
Mr. Fraticelli, is it Paul Foley? He's on the line.
Yeah, sorry, Paul Foley. My phone was on mute. Paul Foley from Fraticelli Oil.
Okay, and then I believe we have Chief Sidlow as well, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so I think the first order of business, there were some plans presented. I think each counselor was given a copy of one plan, which is entitled, well, I guess it's the same plan, just one's a blow up, entitled a LPG vapor cloud explosion. And perhaps the appropriate person could just explain that plan to us.
This is Bob Seppi with MPE. I believe it was Council Cormier asked for a blast zone plan. That's what we present here. Propane tanks that will be going in at Fraticelli Oil are underground tanks, which really don't blow up because they're in the ground. So what we did, we took above ground tanks to create the blast zones, which is what you usually see on YouTube and Hollywood movies, so on and so forth. We grabbed some propane tanks that are currently in place surrounding towns and in Leominster. And there's circles that identify the blast zone with the footage of the radius, of the blast zone radius. So if you start at the bottom of the page, there's a facility over the Sterling line that has two 30,000 gallon above ground tanks. And that shows the radius there of that tank, which is about a third of a mile, or 1,900. As you go up Route 12 there, you have a couple thousand gallon tanks. We did Paul's Rental and Steve, help me, what was the other one? The
Splash Car Wash.
And the radius on those are roughly 1,000 feet or 639 feet, I guess, not 1,000 feet. And then we showed one at the nursery over to the left, a 2,900 gallon tank. That radius blast zone is 278 feet. And just to put things in perspective, I showed a propane grill tank, 20 gallon tank. The blast zone on that's 109 feet. So if that's sitting in your backyard, it can do some major damage to your house. What I did for Fraticelli Oil, I showed a 200 gallon radius, which represents what would be above ground in a delivery truck that came back at the end of the day that would still have product in it. It could be 100 gallons. You know, they try to run them out and make efficient deliveries, but you're never going to get it 100% empty all the time. So I used that as the blast zone for this project, Fraticelli Oil. And it's shown on that map of roughly a 402 foot radius. I hope this basically provided what you're looking for.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'll go to legal affairs. First, go to Councilor Shalfo Zephyr. Do you have any questions on this plan?
I don't have any questions on this specific blast zone map, no. Thank you.
Okay. I'll go to the third member. Councilor Cormier, if you have any questions on the plan.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't have any questions, really. Maybe a couple of comments. I think when we were asked what we were looking for, for an example, I think we asked for, maybe a blast zone, for, assuming that a vehicle parked there had 1,000 gallons in it, or that a couple of vehicles maybe, would have been involved in an explosion that were, somewhat, and maybe you had, 5,000 gallons, but I think that on the other facilities certainly give, a picture here. So I don't really have any questions, on the map, so I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. Does any other member of the city council have any questions relative to the plan that was presented?
Councilor Dombrowski, Councilor Angelini.
Yes. Councilor Angelini, go ahead.
Thank you. Before I pose a question to Mr. Seppi, as a city councilor, certainly not an expert in this particular area, but with the advent of the internet, it becomes increasingly easier to research things like this. And if I may, through my research, some of these vapor cloud maps, they have concentric circles within that main circle that you've shown on your plan. And there's, within the concentric circles, broken down into blast threat, destruction of buildings. Then the next concentric circle would be serious injury likely. The next one is shattered glass. Then there's another concentric circle that identifies as thermal threat, and that would be lethal within a certain range, serious burns within a certain range, pain within a certain range, and then shrapnel and missile threat. Excuse me. So, but this is under what they call BLEVE, and I'm sure you're familiar with that, which stands for boiling liquid expanding vapor explosion.
Yeah, levy.
Yeah. So could you, and as I looked at the map you provided, I noticed, are you, sir, would you be, is it safe to assume that the circle in Sterling, identified as 22 Leggett Hill Road, would that reflect what's currently on that site?
Yes.
No.
And how about if you go looking at your plan to the left, another circle identified as 931 Union Street, would that reflect what's currently on the ground at that location?
Yes.
And could I ask you, below your site, there's two circles. One's identified as 1163 Central Street. The other identified as 999 Central Street. Are those two circles representative of what's on the ground currently?
Yes.
Then I go to your site, sir. 200 gallons. Is that representative of what will be on the site if we approve this permit?
That is what will be on the site that's in a vehicle. Otherwise, the tanks are in the ground. They don't levy because there's no fire heating them up to, cause them to do the explosion of levy.
Sir, are you familiar with propane gas underground seeping through the soil, looking for the path of least resistance. For instance, if it finds a sewer pipe or a water pipe, have you ever heard of instances where the propane migrates into people's basements or into sewer lines?
Obviously, they have up in the north area, Lawrence, when they.
No, excuse me, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, this is Troy. I'm representing Fraticelli from Hall Traffic Equipment. Just to give you a little bit of my background, I'm 33, captain of the fire department in the state of Rhode Island. I'm also a member of the Gas Association of New England, and I'm a member of the emergency response team, and I was the president of that team also for quite a while. I teach at both the fire academies in Rhode Island and in Mass. So let me just give you a little insight on what you're trying to say there with gas falling past
with all due respect, I wasn't quite done, but I'll let you proceed. Go right ahead.
Okay. Well, it's just I can answer your quick thing on path of least resistance. Just it doesn't happen with propane like that. That happens with natural gas quite a bit because it's under pressure. Once the gas leaves the tank, it migrates upward. Propane gas is heavier. It's heavier than air, but it doesn't. It's heavier than air, but it does migrate upward when it's in the ground. Okay, it doesn't leak out like natural gas would be. It doesn't get pushed if that was your case. There's no data on, just to back up a little bit, there's no data anywhere in the country on a levee with an underground tank. That's the reason we really don't have a flash. You can get a flash fire, but to have from 30,000 gallon tank being underground, there's never been a blast. Like I said, there's no data on it, so there's no way to give that answer out, because there's no way to have an impinging flame to weaken the strength of a tank. So your strongest and your safest tanks out there in the propane world are underground tanks.
Okay.
Yep, go ahead.
Well, it's interesting that you said that, because in my research I found an article about a 400-gallon tank that was underground that exploded in Maine, and the Maine State Fire Marshal, and I quote, his name's Joe Thomas.
And I know the situation you're going to refer to. It just happened recently, where the firefighter had gotten killed in that incident. Correct?
No, I think this is a different one. But
okay, go ahead.
But the state fire marshal, Mr. Joe Thomas, quote, if you get a large volume of gas, he's talking about propane, and an ignition source, it's kind of like sitting on Mount Vesuvius. So this is in the Portland Press Herald, February 12, 2013. So again, I respect your expertise, and so if I could get you to go on record right now and tell me with 100% metaphysical certitude that we won't have an incident at this location, I would feel a heck of a lot better about it.
I don't think you're not going to have an incident where that tank would blow up a building. I can tell you that. But what I believe to be the incident that happened there was the gas line that was connected to, the building that underground line was connected to, dumped gas into that same building, and then the building, it filled up with gas, and things happened. But that didn't happen because of these tanks will be connected to no buildings. So any gas leak that would happen come straight up, would come straight up out of the ground. You would definitely get a notice of that. There's no sewer or lines anywhere near the vicinity of the underground that would make a path to a building. But I believe the incident you're talking about in Maine had to do with an underground tank, but it had to do with the underground line that went through the building where something failed, and the gas from that tank made it to the building.
Okay, but you would you disagree with my theory or my thought process here, that in my research actually, that if there was a leak, God forbid, in the tank, and it migrated underground, now you're telling me these tanks are buried, so it migrated underground to Litchfield Street. There in Litchfield Street, there is a sewer line and there is storm drainage. And the sewer lines, obviously, they're lateral connections to the basements of these condominiums in the area. So that would be my concern after the research. Okay. So put my fears at ease.
Okay. So there's no there's no line coming from those tanks that's going to connect. The tanks are going to be totally buried. They'll be 100% buried. There's no line that's going to be coming, so there's no path for it to take. I mean, yes, could it leak through? It'd be so filtered by the time it got there. It's like if I let the gas go in the middle of the air. Just to give you an example of some tanks that we have out there that are in Mass, the city of Worcester has two 45,000-gallon underground propane tanks right next to the right next to 290 highway. It's at CK Smith. I'm sure you all know the facility. It's and then they were put in within the last year. So yeah, as far as not, I'm gonna I don't have anything to back it up because there's no data out there that says this, but I'm gonna go with my knowing what I know and been in this business as long as I've been in this business. That and I know it's gonna sound biased because I'm working for the Fraticellis here and I understand that. But I'm also putting my reputation on the line saying I don't know of any incidents where one of these tanks has blown up a building because of an underground situation where there was nothing connected to that building, without a line connected to that building from those tanks. I don't know of any situation like that anywhere. If you do have that, I will definitely look that one up the screen right now.
Okay, I mean, because as I looked, I actually drove today to that Leggett Hill location. Yep. Leggett Hill that you have identified on your vapor cloud explosion map. It's identified as 22 Leggett Hill Road. I went to that site this afternoon. It's located in an industrial park, and the nearest residence is I would guess 500 yards minimum from that location. Could you tell me? I don't know if someone there could give me the distance from these tanks' proposed location to the nearest residential unit on your site.
So again, the tanks on Leggett Hill Road are above ground tanks also.
Okay. So there'll be no. Okay, so even the trucks that are parked, you're telling me that there'll be no more than 200 gallons exposed above ground at that site at any time. Is that what I'm being told? Because that's what it says on that map.
You have to talk to them about the trucks. We're talking about the supply tank on the site.
But it does show 200 gallons at the Fraticelli site. So I'm assuming now from what you said that's referencing above ground, right?
Yes.
Okay. So are you saying this evening that at any time there'll be no more than 200 gallons of storage above ground on the site?
In a specific tank.
In any specific tank?
Park.
But how about in total? What would you suspect that number will be? Sorry, because you said there'll be some used propane tanks. Some may have some propane in them. I forget exactly your testimony at the last public hearing, but I know that this topic came up about what would actually be there on site, excluding the proposed 30,000 to 230,000 gallon underground tanks.
Yeah, so that's going to all generate on what he does for business, obviously, and what tanks come back. But no, I mean, realistically, there shouldn't be anything by law. We can't move tanks over the road unless it's an absolute emergency, and we have to get permission from several fire departments or wherever the tank may be if we're going to bring a full tank back to the site. So on site, I don't see more than 200 gallons being in. Well, most of the tanks are only going to be 100 gallon tanks anyway. I don't think he's going to have a lot of thousands and 500s there. I don't even know if that's in the plans, but the tanks that he does, is a 100-gallon tank. So I don't see a lot of storage being there above ground. And realistically, I mean, I understand we're talking about Leominster, not any place else. So it's
All right. One last question for Chief Sidlow, if I may, and then I'll wrap it up.
Yes, Counselor. Yes, Counselor, I'm on.
Thank you, Chief. Good evening.
Good evening.
And obviously I respect your opinion immensely, but would you agree with the gentleman that we have absolutely nothing to worry about here if we were to permit this?
Well, no, I couldn't make that statement. Having the propane underground obviously is much safer than having it above ground. What I would like to say is, I'd like to make a suggestion. I believe in the building code. When they pull a building permit, the building official has the, and this through, with the city, has the right to have an independent engineer come on board. And I believe the cost would go on the developer. So that would be my recommendation, because there's a lot of the councilors have a lot of questions and reserves, and it's above my level. I don't have enough knowledge to make these statements, especially in this type of forum over a phone type meeting. So I would highly recommend that the developer either agree to do it, or through the building department, through the building official, is we make it part of the building permit.
Chief,
prior to the. Sure, go ahead.
Chief, just as a third party, I mean, the state fire marshal is the third party, unbiased opinion of the project, and I know Jake Nunemacher, he would be more than happy to do this.
So we did reach out to him, and Jake put it back on us, that it didn't need approval from the state fire marshal. Yep, that is an avenue that, if you wanted to submit, I'm sorry, there's a lot of backfeed on the phones. That obviously is a great option that, if you wanted to submit the plans to the state fire marshal and get their feedback or their approval.
And then just to be clear, I wasn't saying that, it's an absolute 100%, on my, your question was, would it blow up a building? And my statement to that is, it won't blow up a building if it's not connected to that building. That's not, it needs to be, and my opinion is only based on the data that I have on that, and the data that we have on that is none at this time. There's no data anywhere on that.
All right. Well, thank you. I actually, Chief Sidlow, thank you. I'm going to wrap up, but I did send an email to the Chairman of Legal Affairs asking for a peer review of this plan. So I'll leave that out there as my final statement. And thank you, gentlemen, for your time this evening.
Okay, this is the fire chief. Could I just make another comment?
Sure, Chief.
So all the statements about, and all the talk about the, leaks underground, that is one of our biggest issues, is when there is a leak of whether it's natural gas or propane gas in the underground piping, is that it will find the path of least resistance, and it will make it into a building, and then that's where it will have an ignition source, and it cause either a fire in the building or an explosion of the building. But that goes with all of the gas pipes we have throughout the city that are owned by National Grid. That's why, we always want people to call us right away, and we check the surrounding buildings every time we have a leak in the basement.
Mr. Chairman, Chairman, I need to.
Yeah, I'm going to. Yeah, we're going to.
Start the meeting.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. Yeah, we're going to suspend for a minute, and we're going to start the regular meeting. If everybody would rise and recite with me the salute to the flag. I
pledge allegiance to
the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we'll take the roll of the councilors present, starting with Councilor Frida.
Present.
Councilor Dombrowski.
Present.
Councilor Shalfo Zephyr.
Present.
Councilor Feckley.
Present.
Councilor Angelini.
Present.
Councilor Ardinger.
Present.
Councilor Pauline Cormier,
Present.
Councilor David Cormier,
Present.
and I shall be recorded as present. All 9 councilors are in attendance. Does the chairwoman of records have a report?
I do, Mr. President. I have the minutes of our city council meeting of Monday, October 26, 2020. There are a couple of very minor edits that don't affect the outcome of any of our votes, so I'm going to be speaking with the city clerk about that. Other than that, I find them to be in order and ask that they be placed on file.
Very well. And Madam Vice President, I would ask you at this point to entertain a motion to recess, and you can continue your 6:15 hearing.
Thank you very much. Do I have a motion to recess?
Exactly, it's David Cormier.
Okay. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Does anybody object? Okay, we are now in recess, and Councilor Dombrowski, you can return to the hearing.
Okay, if I may, I just want to direct this line of questioning to the representatives for Fraticelli Oil. My understanding is the design, installation, and operation of this particular facility needs to comply with NFPA 58, the Liquefied Petroleum Code, NFPA 1, the Fire Code, as well as the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Fire Code. And I think maybe if you could take us through this, perhaps as if you were explaining it to neophytes, which I think is what you are. Exactly what goes into the installing of these tanks, what's involved with the construction from the first step to the point in time where employees are turning a valve and filling up a truck or filling up a tank with propane. I understand these regulations are very strict and they're designed for safety. So I think I'd like you to bring us through that entire process and also bring us to the point where once it is installed, how is it maintained so that we don't have one of these problems. I think if we going on here is you have a very well respected business owner in town who employs a lot of people and has done well. There's, from what I can tell, never an issue whatsoever, and he's trying to improve his business so that he can keep up with the times. And as he said at the last public hearing, he wants to maintain the same number of jobs that he has there and hopefully expand on those jobs. So we're being asked to weigh that against, essentially a difficult location because there is a neighborhood fairly close, and maybe more importantly, people's fear of a silent explosion. So maybe if you can take us through that process so that we understand exactly what's going to happen at that site to install these tanks and exactly what is going to happen to maintain them and make sure they're safe after they're installed. So I don't know who the best person, I imagine Mr. Steffi, you probably are the best guy to start. I don't know.
That's right.
Yeah, I can. So what we'll do is, if approved, we will put together a detailed design of the equipment itself, because that all costs a lot of money if it's approved. But going forward, everything would be put in by NFPA 58, which is, you know, the fire code that we follow in Massachusetts and actually throughout the nation. And it'll be put into the Massachusetts following 2015 edition. And what we called this compliance was NFPA 58 2011 compliance was back in the day. So since 2011, just to give you a little history too, is all the tanks, all large, anything over 4,000 gallons had to have multiple means of shutting them down to prevent the levee situation from happening. And to date, with a large tank since 2011, there has been no levies of record that I know of. I'm not going to say there. If somebody finds one, please send it to me. I'll give you my email or send it to Mr. Credicelli, and we'll. I'd like to see it just so we know, so we don't make the statement again. But there's been no large levies. What happens now with the new valving and with NFPA in 2011 made the statement you did not have to have some kind of remote shutoff on a tank. Now all the tanks have three ways of shutting them down. They have a remote, they have a fusible, and they have a handheld to shut them down. So there's three means to shut them down. If nobody's around, they'll actually shut themselves down if there's a fire because all our fusibles will melt, and what we use for our fusibles is basically DOT airline.
If I could just interrupt you, real quick, and I apologize. When you say shut them down, are you talking about stopping any more gas from leaving the tank? Is that what you mean?
Correct. Yes. I'm sorry. Yes. When I say shut it down, that's when I refer to no gas coming out of the tank. All the valves shut down. So what we do now is.
So when you're telling, and again, I'm just trying to simplify this. What you're basically
on the phone. I get it.
Yeah, I know. These tanks are built in such a way, and the backfill requirements are done in such a way that what would you say are the chances that the tank could actually leak?
The tank itself?
Yes, the underground tank. That it could split somewhere, or there's a manufacturing error in a part of the tank. Just, you know.
I have no recollection of that ever happening to any of the tanks out there. The most I've ever seen, and it's something that's going to be is a problem with the manway, maybe a leaking gasket or something, but that is visible. That's always going to be checked, and that's part of the process of when they're going in and doing their everyday stuff. For all the parts of the tank that you cannot see, I have no recollection of that ever happening. Bob, do you have anything like that?
I don't. They're pressure vessels that are made for high pressure and pretty thick steel, and there's a coating on top of the tank, and they use cathodic protection around the tank. So the chances of any rusting or failure of the shell is basically negligible.
All right. So just to summarize, and if I misspeak, please correct me. But just to summarize, so what you're telling me is that when you put that tank in the ground, and there's, you know, however many gallons you're asking for each tank, that tank is safe, and any problems we're going to have are going to come from the valves that are exterior of the tank, and that there are shutoffs in place so that if there is a leak, then nothing else can come out of the tank.
Shutoff valve.
Correct.
Is that a fair summary?
That is an excellent summary to say that I don't believe you would ever have a problem from any of the tank. And if you did have a problem with any of the tanks, it'll come from the valves. Yes, that's the excellent summary to say. Just put it that way.
All right, now can you describe these valves for us? Exactly how they work, how they connect to the tank, and how they get to somebody actually manually using them to fill a truck or what have you.
So what gets installed in the tank is we call it the internal valve for the tank. All right. So on it'll have there's two different valves. There's a back check valve and an internal valve that goes in the tank. the back check valve that we put into tanks only lets gas in. It will not let gas out. So the only way to put gas in it is putting it in. The only way to get it out is not to come out that way. You have to have a different valve. The other valves we use are internal valves, and they work 3 ways. They have what's also called on them an excess flow valve, which is built into the internal valve. What that would do is if there was no fire, a rupture of a line or a hose downstream would actually make this valve plug off. So we set them for whatever his pump is going to do in the piping capacity of gallons per minute. So just to put it in simple numbers, if the pump, if they'll do 100 gallons a minute and the valve reads that the gas coming out of this tank is because of the pressure being pushed on it is up to 110 gallons a minute, it actually sets itself off. So it actually, nobody would be around to have to do that. It would just do it itself if there's a rupture down line. So it would shut itself off.
So let me just interrupt you again with a follow-up question. So let's say that happens. There's a problem with the valve and there's an automatic shut-off. What is the most gas that can be contained in the line based on the size of these tanks? Is it 10 gallons, 15, 100?
So it's definitely going to depend on how far we go from valve to pump, from pump to hose to truck. So realistically, I'll use the facility in Worcester because that's the closest one to you. Probably a total of, if I would, and I'm guessing, probably 30 gallons is in the piping.
Is that a high?
I have a pretty good educated guess on it.
Okay, so that's 30 gallons. Would that be the high number, or is that just?
No, I believe if that 30 gallons were to rupture off, it would be long gone before most people would even know about it. You might have a small smell in the air, but 30 gallons would pretty much dissipate fairly quickly.
Okay. All right. So now,
let me correct that. All things being equal, and we have a beautiful day like today. Yes, if we have a rainy, cloudy day, I don't think you'd have a very high splash point, but you would have a cloud and you'd see the gas. The weather has a lot to do with it too. But 30 gallons would not concern me very much. Everything concerns me. It just wouldn't concern me very much.
All right. So the tank is put in the ground. It's backfilled. I think the engineer at the first public hearing talked about there's very serious requirements as to the backfill that you can use. So now you've got, so now you have a line that goes from the tank through the soil and then it penetrates the soil so that it's visible. Is that correct?
It doesn't really go through the...
Designing this particular unit, we wouldn't probably put the lines. I mean, if it's my design, we're probably not going to put the lines through the dirt. They'll be above ground.
They're straight out of the tank.
So how are they connected? How are they connected to the tank? And how does that work?
So there's what we call a cofferdam or a manway on the tank. So there's a small section of the shell of the tank that's exposed, where that's actually underground with a hood over it, and it's a steel cabinet. And we would come out, the pipes would come out, and they'd actually come through the steel cabinet, so everything you could see that. But the tank itself would be covered, but would be doors so you could open it so you could look to see what's going on.
Okay, so now what's involved in maintaining those lines?
So those lines need to be taken care of. Mr. Fraticelli's people would have to. They'd be actually doing visual on those. Probably insurance companies are probably going to ask for at minimum a monthly check on it. By fire code, and we'd have to report to the local fire marshal and give him reports on stuff, a yearly basis on the valves have been checked and everything is working properly. They need to stay painted. Maintenance needs to be kept up on them. They have to show they work, and every year you have to, what you do is you should be evacuating the gas lines and then rapidly opening them and checking that plug feature to make sure the spring still works. It shuts off the gas without anybody around. There is a way to test that.
Now, how often is that tested?
That should be tested at least once a year.
I'm sorry, I lost you.
That should be tested at least once a year.
At least once a year?
By code, it needs to be tested once a year.
Okay, and then I imagine people are using it every day?
That would be used every single day, correct. Well, probably not the weekends, but yes, that would be,
I think we've got somebody maybe who hasn't muted their phone.
I found them right now. I'm going to mute them. I'm sorry.
Thanks. No, thank you very much, Caitlin.
There you go.
Okay, so at the last public hearing, the fire chief had suggested having an independent check those valves periodically and report to the fire chief. What would your position be as somebody in the industry on that type of a requirement?
so we do those type of requirements. I can tell you, that's what my company does. We build the plants and we'll do third-party checks for people. We do them for the town of Canton. There's a company out there called Lamparelli Oil who has a 30,000-gallon tank. His is above ground, but we do go out there and we do periodic checks. We do an annual, and we run the whole system, and we submit our report to the fire chief, Chief Dooley in Canton.
All right, so I understand you're doing an annual, but is there a more aggressive third-party check system that you've experienced?
Not really. I mean, there's not a lot to the tank itself. There's not a lot to work on, really. We check the ESV system, which is the emergency shut-off system. Make sure that all the nitrogen is working. We check the system for leaks, and we check for valve operation. And that's it in a nutshell, really, for the tank. Well, I'm sorry, and we also check the anode bags. So there's a cathodic protection on the tank. So we check to make sure.
And this is only done once a year?
Those internal valves are operating every day, opening and closing for filling and then the tank. So they get operated daily when he's filling the trucks. When they shut down, they close. So it's not like they're sitting there waiting to work. The safety.
Right. No, I understand that, but what I'm talking about is just an independent checking to make sure there's no problem about to occur that maybe one of the employees isn't quite picking up.
Yeah, so employees are trained to pick up on this. So per Mass Code, all of his employees need to be CTEP certified, which he has been working on, and he does have some employees that have actually already gone through a lot of the training, and there's more to be done. But in one of the CTEP certification is bulk plant operations, which goes through all that system, and you need to have that person trained and available at your site who's there, who can make those checks and knows the ins and outs of the tank. And that's all part of the Mass Code. That's all part of the CMR, 527 CMR talks about that CTEP certification needs to be done for that.
Okay, and how often do these employees need to be certified? What's the requirement for that?
So there's a process now that there wasn't, but there is, and I can't give you the answer yet because it's a process right now. His employees are going to be good for a little while because they're all getting the training now, but they're in the process of continuing ed. So that process is that's being worked out at the moment. But right now he's falling in compliance with Massachusetts Fire Code and also the 527 CMR. He's falling in compliance with that. He's not falling in compliance with it as far as his bulk plant employees because he doesn't have a bulk plant yet, so he hasn't sent those people yet. But I have not seen him, so he's not going to do anything they need to do. So
I understand. Let me ask the question a different way. Let's say I have an employee and they get CTEC trained and certified. How long is that certification good for?
It's good forever. But right now they're working on it, but it's not going to be good forever. That's what I was saying. They are working on continuing education for that program. So it's pretty soon, it's not gonna be good forever. There is a program coming up for continuing ed on that. But as of right now, if they go through that class, it's good.
All right, now what's involved in the certification? Is this a 2-hour,
No.
instruction?
I wanna say I think it's a 3-day class.
A 3-day class.
I
And
think
everybody-
there's so many of them. There's so many of those classes, but I think there's quite a. Let's see, the last ones we just did basics with them. That was a week. So there's a whole, and you can get all that information from the Propane Gas Association of New England. Because I don't want to give you the wrong information. So if you feel it's like I said, it's Propane Gas Association of New England.org, and that's right. It's right on their website.
Okay. All right, so now just the final part of it. We got the tank in the ground, we've got it properly backfilled. We've got the steel compartment that's bringing the lines out. So now, how are we getting the gas into a tank or into a truck? What's the next phase of this?
So the gas is actually, like we talked about, the lines will be coming out of the tank through those valves. On top of those, also those internal valves, there's a hand valve also. So besides the internal valve with all the remote closers on it, there's also a hand valve there too. That's required on even a back check has to have it through. From there, it'll go to a pump. The pump will boost up the pressure, and then that will in turn go through a series. If he's going to have a meter there, it'll have a meter, and then some hoses. The hoses themselves, just before the hoses, we have a series of emergency shutoff valves and back checks that are required for the stanchion itself to prevent if the driver were to do a pull away. Meaning a pull away would be something where a driver forgot that he had his hoses hooked up and drove his truck away. So there's all sorts of safety shutoffs to prevent that. Well, it won't prevent that from happening, but it'll prevent gas leakage. So there's several ways that it'll stop it.
Okay. All right, so let me go back to the city council. If any councilors have any questions or comments at this point.
Yeah, Councilor Dabrowski, this is Councilor Shalfo Zephyr.
Okay, go ahead, Councilor Zephyr.
Thank you very much. Gentlemen, I do want to go back to the vapor cloud explosion, excuse me, go back to that map. And in looking at it, I noticed that you did put several different examples. And the example at 239 Litchfield Street, which is the existing location, is a 200-gallon explosion. And I guess the radius is 403 feet. And then there's a 1,000-gallon explosion, another 1,000, a 30,000-gallon explosion, and a 2,900-gallon explosion. So I'm just going to go back to a question I had at the end of our last public hearing, is that the petition is asking for approval of 120,000 gallons of above ground storage. It is also asking for approval of 120,000 gallons of underground storage. So I guess my question is, if the petition is looking for approval, if the petitioner is looking for approval of 120,000 gallons of above ground storage, where did the 200-gallon blast map example come from? Or how did you determine that example?
What I did was I asked Steve how many gallons he thought was coming back at the end of a day from a truck after going out for deliveries. Obviously, they fill a truck out, they make deliveries, and they can't always 100% empty the tank. So 200 gallons was a guesstimated volume that would come back in the truck that would be sitting parked on his property. It could be the back part of the property. And
that's for one truck? Sir, excuse me, I'm sorry. That's for one truck?
Right. The thing is, we have to, for the requirements of the regulations, we have to account for every gallon that could be in a tank as if it was full. It's just the way the code is written. So even though there'd be 100,000 gallons of tanks there, they could all be empty. We still have to account for it in the license. And that's basically the case he's going to have there. He's going to have probably 30 or 40,000 gallons of brand new tanks that never seen a drop of gas, but we have to account for it. You could have, unlikely, but say 10,000 gallons of tanks that came back because the customers have gone to another dealer, and as soon as they come back, they get emptied. They're gonna sit there, but we have to account for the volume that they could potentially hold. Same with the trucks. The trucks are 3,400 gallons. You'll never see 3,400 gallons in them. We have to account for each truck, the maximum amount of water gallons or the actual gallons of the tank. That's why we got a high number, not because there's gonna be actually that much liquid gas sitting on top of the ground. Just that that's what the tanks will hold, and that's what we're required to do.
Is that the same for the underground tanks?
Underground tanks, they're
Will they be filled to capacity, I guess is the question, for the underground
well,
tanks?
tanks are for water. We'll call them water gallons. 'Cause if you filled it with water, you'd actually have 30,000 gallons in it. But with propane, you only can fill about 80%. So the liquid gas would be, the liquid propane would be 80% of that 30,000. But again, we have to account for the actual size of the tank and the life. Similar to his fuel tanks there. They'll never hold what they can hold because you don't fill them all the way to the top, and you don't, but you have to account for them being full percent.
All right, thank you for that.
Any follow-up, Councilor Zephyr?
Not at the moment.
Okay. Any other councilors have any questions or comments at this time?
Councilor Pauline Cormier?
Go ahead, Councilor Cormier.
I suppose this question should go to Mr. Fraticelli. What I'm wondering about is in the trucks, and I think Councilor Shalafo Zephyr alluded to that. I want to know that if you have deliveries early in the morning, that the truck isn't going to be filled the night before, so that the driver just has to get there in the morning and then go to make their deliveries.
No, that wouldn't be done because that would actually cause damage to the truck. With all that weight
Okay.
sitting on the truck overnight, it would break the springs, break the suspension of the truck.
Okay. And then, sort of in the same line of questioning, then, my guess is you have a pretty good idea of how much gas is going out in the morning and how much is going to be sold, delivered. So when you expect the trucks to come back in the evening, you expect that those trucks to be as close to empty as they're going to be, correct?
Yes, correct.
So we're not going to have to worry about trucks sitting above ground with all this extra gas just sitting in them either overnight or at the end of the evening, correct?
Right. So, I mean, let's say the driver doesn't even have a full truck on his roof. So let's say he only has 1,200 gallons to give out to customers, then he's only going to fill the truck to 1,200 gallons because there's no need to fill it. Because he's not going to sell a whole truckload that day.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Fraticelli. I do, through the chair, I do have one question for the fire chief, Chief Sidlow.
Go ahead.
Chief, during my understanding of this is a big part of it in properly installing these tanks. It involves the backfill and everything else. Will the fire department have any role in, I don't know, supervising that, inspecting it?
So, we deal with gasoline stations quite a bit, and we go there when they're going to do their piping, and we permit the piping and everything, and we do see the installation. But we rely a lot on the installer and then the engineer of record, which this will have. This will, this propane is obviously it's sensitive to the city, so we would definitely be part of making sure that everything in NFPA 58 was done.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Chief. Th- Thank you, Counselor Dombrowski. I don't have any further questions.
Okay, thank you, Counselor Coleman. Any other counselor have any questions or comments at this time?
Counselor
Counselor
Dombrowski.
Dabrowski, Counselor Beckley.
Okay, I'll go to Counselor Feckley first, and then I'll go to you, Counselor Angelini.
Thank you.
Counselor Feckley.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Fraticelli, I have just a couple of questions. One is actually a very simple question. Instead of two 30,000-gallon tanks, why not just one and get more deliveries?
With propane, that's almost impossible. During the winter months, propane is in very short supply. And I believe Mr. Seppi referenced it at the last meeting that propane can be in short supply, that I could be going to Texas to pick up propane, and obviously that truck's not going to make it back the same day. It could take weeks before that truck comes back here. So it's important that I'm able to stay supplied to keep the customers supplied.
Is that historical? I mean, is that just something that may happen, or is that something historical and
It has happened.
why can't, yeah, okay, and why can't it be picked up? As like, there's places in New York, I believe you could pick up propane?
Because they're out.
They're out, are they out now?
Oh, they're not out now, but they could become this winter.
Yeah. Right, but the point I'm making is that this is it could happen kind of situation, but not that it historically happened. But it could happen. Is that what you're saying?
Propane runs in short supply pretty much every winter.
Right, the other,
Let's do that.
yeah, go ahead, I'm sorry, go ahead.
A lot of the supplies come by rail. In the wintertime, a lot of the rails are shut down, which affects supply often.
Are they shut down because of bad weather, or are they shut down in general?
Both time, bad weather.
Yeah. All right, so I'm going to take that as that's something that can happen, but not necessarily happen. So I'm just going to take
Well,
it
it has
as
happened.
that.
It
Yeah,
has
well,
happened.
I'm sure it has. Okay. So the other thing is, you know, I did some investigation into this, and I think that, I don't know who exactly said it, but they said that there were going to be anode bags on the tanks, and I think that that's a matter of course. Is that a matter of course, or is that something you're doing for extra protection?
No, that's standard procedure for any underground tank.
Okay. All right, and then my next question is, or actually my comment is for the chief, fire chief. Chief Sidlow?
Yes, go ahead.
You're still there? Okay, so actually, it's a comment. You mentioned that we could in fact have the state fire marshal be involved in this if we wanted to?
Yeah, so a little what's going on is Deputy Cameron is here with me, and so when we're muted, we go back and forth. And he reached out to the fire marshal's office, and they have engineers down there. They have a staff, and basically they told them that the fire marshal's office told Deputy Cameron that with the underground tanks, they usually don't get involved. So I mean, we can reach out back to them and ask for more assistance, or if Mr. Fraticelli's team wants to submit the plan to them first. It's hard because they're looking for the license before they spend the money to do the complete engineered plans. I'd also like to make a comment on the tanks being in the ground, the number one thing would be that the rust over the years, and that's what the cathodic protection takes care of. So, you know, they have to do their annual test and everything to make sure that the tanks are sound. And I'm not sure of the lifespan too on the tank.
All right, does anybody listening in have an idea of what the lifespan is on the tank?
I've seen 30 to 40 plus years.
Okay. All right, actually, you just answered my next question, Chief, so thank you. And then just one other quick question. Would the plumbing inspector need to be involved in this?
I don't, so this is the fire chief. No, NFPA 58 for that type of installation is the permitting will come through our office. So we would do the visual inspection with the installers and then with the engineers. So a project like this is, when they're ready to open, we would go down and we would do a visual inspection, and we would reference NFPA 58, and the installer and the engineer would be there. And both, normally in these type of operations, the installers are very well versed on it, obviously, and they kind of walk us through it, because we're not experts in this field. We're basically, we're just local firemen that, with some knowledge. That's why I get back to, you can always request an independent engineer to be more thorough than we could.
All right, thank you very much.
This is Attorney Foley, if I can just chime in for just 1 second.
Yes.
I just want to direct, the fire chief mentioned having an independent person come on to the project. And this is actually specifically contemplated by the Mass regs. So under 527 CMR, and this is section 1403, it indicates that the head of the fire department may condition the issuance of any permit issued under this regulation upon the completion of a satisfactory inspection by the head of the fire department or his or her designee to determine compliance with the applicable regs. So I think that, if the fire department itself felt like it needed somebody independent to come on board and take a look at this, it could actually come from the fire department to have this reviewed by its own independent agent, instead of coming through the building inspector. If that's of any, I hope that's somewhat helpful in terms of having the right eyes, so to speak, on the project.
Sure.
That's very helpful, yes.
Yes, it is. It's very helpful. Thank you. The thing that would come down to would be that who pays for the independent engineer. But I would have no problem doing that for the city councils, making it part of the permit process, that an independent engineer would oversee it, as long as who pays for the engineer is straightened out prior to that. Thank you.
All right, thank you, gentlemen.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Feckley. Councilor Angelini, did you have some additional questions?
I did. I had a couple follow-ups, Councilor Dombrowski. Thank you.
Yep, go ahead.
First of all, the gentleman earlier stated that since 2001, we haven't had any, quote, incidents, unquote. Are you referring to the Commonwealth of Massachusetts or the United States, or what geographic area would that include?
So it was 2011 compliant.
That's it.
And it would be as far as an underground or even a levy of a large 30,000 gallon tank. I'm not saying there hasn't been. I don't know of any, and I try to keep myself up to snuff on all that. And there's nothing in the country, I don't believe. If there's something else, let me know.
Okay. And my second question would be, based on the exchange that I heard just a few moments ago with Councilor Shalafo-Zephyr in regard to above ground storage, if, and I stress the word if, the council entertained a conditional approval, would a condition that no more than 200 gallons above ground storage on premises, if that were included as a condition, would that be acceptable to the applicant?
Well, I believe that comes into a conflict of the regulations for the licensing process, because the licensing says I clearly have to list all above ground storage, which would be empty tanks, trucks. It's not just for storage tanks, it's for customer tanks that are on site empty, propane trucks, propane tankers. So, I mean, I'm just following the bylaws for applying for this license. I mean, that's the only reason why the gallons that were applied for is because I'm just following the procedures.
All right, and again, I'm just referencing the plan that you submitted to the council this evening that shows 200 gallons of above ground storage on the site. So that's what prompted my question.
Yes. No, and that's you know, all those customer tanks that are on my site are empty, so there's not going to be any propane in them. So obviously, you can't have an explosion from something that's empty. But again,
I wouldn't consider empty tanks. Yeah, I wouldn't consider empty tanks as in that 200 gallon figure. Obviously, it would be 200 gallons of material of propane above ground, because again, just referring to the plan that was submitted. All right, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I have no other questions, and appreciate
Thank you, Councilor Angelini. Yeah, are there any other councilors that have any questions or comments?
Councilor Dabrowski, this is Councilor Frida.
Go ahead, Councilor Frida.
This is for Chief Sidlow. I'm not sure if you know, I'm just trying to get an idea. How many above ground propane tanks do we have throughout the city for filling propane grill tanks? We seem to have a lot of them. I'm just curious if you have an idea.
I don't have a number off the top of my head, but I was going to mention this a little bit later. But since we brought it up now, I wanted to talk a little bit about it.
I was checking with Chief Sidlow. I'm sorry.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, the chief. So the chief is on. Deputy Cameron had compiled the list. He's trying to bring it up in his computer right now. I want to say there was 5 or 6. I think it's 5 facilities throughout the city that actually fill the tanks on site. There's Hamilton Street. There's BJ's. There's the 2 that on Central Street that they've referenced, and then there's the A&G Rental building down on Mill Street.
There's the little peach stores or the Tedeschi's now. They have them.
Well, they don't fill on site. They have the like the Blue Rhino type.
Oh, all right. Okay.
The Blue Rhino type there's quite a few of those. These are the above ground 1,000-gallon tanks. They're in a fenced-in area, and the employees on scene are trained, and they fill the 20-pounders.
That's what I was going to ask you too. You're saying there's 1,000 gallons in those tanks?
Yeah, there's 6 of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6. 6. There's 6 of them, and the one that I missed was the U-Haul on Central Street. So it was the list that I said, and then the U-Haul on Central Street. Those are 1,000 gallons above ground. Like I said, they're fenced in. They have to have the bollard protection. Only the person filling is allowed into the cage at the time, and then they receive certain training on how to fill the tanks. Those are the 20-pounders or the 30-pounders.
Right. I guess, visually, when you look at some of these places, there just seems to be people sometimes lined up, so they're turned on, turned off, turned on, turned off. Just seems to be a lot more activity with a propane tank above ground, especially during summer months when people are really filling their tanks all the time. But
well,
all right.
Like I said at the other meetings is.
I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, like I said at the previous meeting, was propane has become a lot more popular, and a lot of homes now are heating with propane, and they have the 500-gallon tanks buried in the background, and we're doing a lot of the stand-up 50-pounders for a lot of people that are using for whether they're using them for their stoves. Ovens and stoves in the house or their fireplaces, but all day long our guys are receiving permits and doing inspections on those.
All right. What is the average amount that's in a residential home tank? I mean, like oil is 275 gallons. What on the average? What would the gas tank hold?
This is Deputy Chief Cameron. A typical underground in a home is probably 500 gallons. And then like for an above ground, if they set it in the yard, it's probably like 120.
Okay. All right. And Steve, I interrupted you before. I apologize.
That's okay.
But I know, and I'm trying to, the name escapes me. I'm trying to think of who the largest provider of propane gas. I think, is he out of Pepperell or Townsend?
Yeah, Lord.
Lorden, thank you. That's who it is. Is anybody familiar with what type of a system he has there?
He has above ground. Storage.
Above ground?
He has above ground storage.
Okay. All right. So I'll go back to, you were going to comment when I interrupted you for the chief. I apologize.
That's okay. I was just going to comment on the new streets in town, Samoset, Keeneland, Ballard, Spindletop. There's roughly 74 houses in those 3 streets, one right off of another. Every single one of those houses has a 500-gallon underground tank. That's roughly 40,000 gallons of underground storage in that small neighborhood. There's hundreds of other tanks sprinkled throughout the city, whether it's underground, above ground. Right now, there's no propane company in town. There's no trained professionals to handle a situation. Wouldn't it be nice to have army of trained professionals back up the fire department if something should happen on site? So we'll have a facility on site right in town that can take a dangerous situation and diffuse it right away, because we have the equipment and the ability and the knowledge to stop that from happening. Right now, Leominster does not have that. But they have many of outside companies coming in, putting these tanks on people's property. Some from Townsend, some from New Hampshire, some from Worcester. Take 45 minutes, an hour, maybe even an hour and a half to respond to a situation. All you'd have to do is call our office, and we respond within minutes, just as we always have with the oil. Remember a situation that happened just last winter where another company's oil truck leaked oil all over Litchfield Street.
Yeah, it sure did.
We sent an army out there to help the fire department clean up the spill, contain it. We even pumped out the other company's truck with our own truck, and we mitigated the disaster that could have happened if we weren't there to respond. So just something to think about. I know, a lot of people are thinking negatively about this and the potential bad effects from it, but there's an awful lot of good that could come from it, and it could really, really help the city of Leominster.
Well, I do know there are a lot of homes. I didn't realize there were that many up in the Spindletop area, but I do know, as a real estate appraiser, I do know how many, whether National Grid or Eversource or Unitil, some of these areas aren't extending their gas lines, or they're too rural, and people want gas to heat. They're more concerned about oil than propane gas. So I do know that these are brand new homes that people are requesting installations on those. And I think that goes to what the fire department just said about how many permits that they're looking at all the time for this.
Yeah.
I guess I have visions of the gas stations more than, and I think of the discussions we had about the two Cumberland farms being so big, and thinking of, you get citizens that are pumping their gas, not professionals, people, teenagers, elderly. I mean, everybody, putting the hose in the tank and just letting it sit until it pops out. I mean, there's just so many different possibilities of issues. But and I think this is just part of what the future is bringing us. So, all right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm good for now.
Okay, thank you, Council Freda. I'm sorry. Yes.
Yeah, this is Troy Phillips again. Just to give a quick summary of how the safety record is impeccable, and you can check is like the city of Worcester. I'm just going to give you a quick step of this. Is the city of Worcester has 245,000 gallon tanks underground. Belchertown, Massachusetts, they have 230,000 underground tanks. We're installing now at Billsville Elementary School is getting an 18,000 gallon underground tank. Georgetown, Mass, at Townsend Energy, they have a 30,000 gallon underground tank. Also, Bay Path Vocational School has a 30,000 gallon underground propane tank. And and feel free to check out their safety record. It's impeccable. I mean, nobody has problems with underground tanks as long as they're maintained. And I feel that, and I think all of you know that Fraticelli is not going to let any of their stuff go shabby.
No, in fact, I encourage everyone to come and view my current bulk plan if you want. The current bulk plan I have for heating oil and diesel fuel. The first phase was built in 2002, and you would never know that was a 18, 20-year-old plant the way it looks right now. Looks like it was just finished being built.
Outside of the questions and the information gathering that being said, I don't think you can go without notice that you are a local businessman that's family's been in business for a long time, and I would find it very hard to believe that you would do anything that would jeopardize your business or your community because you've been involved for so long. So, I mean, that whatever we think about the permit, whatever we think about anything else, that I think that needs to be said. So,
and that's something else I also want to mention too. If this was something bad or I felt it was going to be very harmful to people, why would I want to pursue doing this and put myself and many other people in jeopardy if it was really something that was harmful or bad? I mean, and I'm even I'm even bearing the extra expense of putting these tanks underground just to be extra safe about it. Because it's a much safer way of installing this facility than going with an above ground tank.
And it's a much more costly operation too, so that extra fee.
Okay, understood. Let me just interject here. Are there any other counselors that have any questions or comments at this time? Okay, now here.
Yep, I have one quick one. Councilor Shell.
Go ahead.
Thank you. This is for Mr. Fraticelli, and I think it's a quick question. In talking about, we've talked about above ground, which is kind of where I've been focusing, above ground storage, and I really appreciate the explanation that the gentleman provided before, that it's the total capacity, which will mostly be empty, is my takeaway from that. But my question is, do you see, or is part of your plan perhaps down the road to install any above ground tanks like the 1,000-gallon above ground tanks that the variety of businesses that the fire department just mentioned that fill small, barbecue grill tanks? Do you envision that at all, like getting into that where?
That is something that is a possibility. Of course, the facility would only be open during business hours, and it could only be attended by one of my trained professionals that would be allowed to fill the tanks.
And that would require an above ground larger tank though, correct?
That would be a 1,000-gallon tank.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay. Yep. Any other counselors have any other questions at this time? Okay, I'm going to go to the audience. Is there anyone in the audience or listening to this meeting that wishes to address the council either in favor of or against this petition, And if you could just identify yourself and your address for me. Okay, second time, is there any member of the audience who wishes to address the council, either in favor of or against this petition? Third and final time, is there any member of the audience who wishes to address the council, either in favor of or against this petition? Okay, I'm going to bring it back to the council. Any final questions or comments at this time? Okay, Madam Vice President, if I could just do some quick subcommittee work, if you don't mind.
Certainly, go right ahead. Certainly, go right ahead.
Okay, it seems to me, you know, Mr. Fraticelli, I think, first of all, if the members of Legal Affairs Committee desire to close the public hearing at this time, or if they feel the need to keep this open, perhaps visit the site, I don't know, but I think that's the only possible outstanding matter that we haven't delved into. So I first go to Councilor Zephyr and get her thoughts on that.
On keeping the public hearing open?
Well, I think the only thing that's outstanding is if there's a feeling of a need for a site visit. I personally have been to the site before, so I've seen it obviously from the street 100 times. So I don't need to go to the site. I'm just asking members of my subcommittee if they feel there's a need to go to the site.
You know, I have been by the location. I know where it is. I've been by it from the front. I haven't really walked the site. So at this point, I wouldn't make that a requirement in order to close the hearing,
Okay.
no.
Okay, Councilor Cormier?
I personally do not need to visit the site. As far as closing the hearing, if we do that, I believe we can't really take any more, sort of information. So I know the fire chief had made a point about, having a review done, figuring out the expense, but if we close the hearing, then, that can't be done, I don't believe, because then there's no more vehicles. What's that?
I mean, from my perspective, Councilor Cormier, what I would like to do is close the hearing tonight. I personally am in favor of granting this, but I do have certain conditions. And one of the conditions is going to be that, the fire chief is going to employ an independent, and that the applicant would pay for that independent review, similar to what's done in planning board hearings. And I guess we'll put the cards on the table now. Mr. Fraticelli, is that something that you would not be opposed to?
Top of my head, I have no idea what something like that would cost, so I don't know what I'm getting into. If anyone knows
Fair enough.
Like that would cost, at least if I knew the cost beforehand, before I could make an answer on that.
Well, what we could do is we could continue the public hearing to get that information. I think, again, as I said earlier, there's no question that your track record is exemplary. You've been a great business owner in the city, but I think you can appreciate difficulties surrounding the location. And also, propane has come on fast and hard, but as you yourself said, we don't really have anyone in town that can act as an expert. So now we're going to be potentially installing this facility, and I think, we just want or at least I'm speaking for myself here, I would like an independent to be there to say, yes, they, the tanks are good, the tanks check out. Yes, the backfill checks out. Yes, the lines check out. To make sure that initial installation is done the way it should be done. So, perhaps the best thing is, why don't we, if we continue the public hearing to get that information, perhaps, Chief, is that something you can look into?
Yes, that we can. While the meeting's going on, we referenced our code book, and it does have a section in there that I can request a third-party independent review, and it's on the cost of the applicant.
Okay, so why don't we, maybe between now and the next meeting, we can look into who that third party might be and what they're recommending that could be part of this review. Let me go back to my committee real quick. Councilor Zephyr, does that sound reasonable?
It does. I support that.
Okay, Councilor Cormier, how about yourself?
Yeah, I also agree with that as well.
Okay. And then just the applicant, I know you try to start in the spring, but I think another couple of weeks might prove to be beneficial for everybody. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Okay. So we're going to leave, Madam Vice President, we're going to leave this public hearing open. I'd ask the clerk if she could give me a date and time for the next one.
Yes, Councilor Dombrowski. Our next meeting would be November 23rd. I would suggest 6 p.m. with the way these have been going, and we have things starting at 6:40 that night. So 6 on 11/23.
Okay. Okay. And just for the applicant and everybody, is that a time that's going to work?
Yes.
Okay. All right. We're going to leave the public hearing open. We're going to suspend for now. Later on, we'll be asking Madam Vice President to vote on extending the public hearing to November 23rd, 2020 at 6:00 p.m. And I just want to thank everybody involved for all the information and expertise you brought to the table. And I do want to thank the Legal Affairs Committee and my fellow counselors for a lot of good questions.
Thank you very much, Chairman.
Yep.
All set, Madam Vice President?
Yes, thank you, Mr. President.
Okay, thank you for handling that for me. At this point, we're going to conduct the public forum. The public forum is an opportunity for any member of the audience to speak on a matter specifically listed on the council agenda. Speakers will be asked to come to the microphone and state their formal name and address, along with identifying the specific item or items they wish to address. Each speaker is respectfully asked to keep their comments within a 2-minute time frame. The council will not be responding or answering any questions. However, at the discretion of the council president, clarification may be given. Is there any member of the public that wishes to speak in the public forum? Second time, is there any member of the public that wishes to speak in the public forum? The third and final time, is there any member of the public that wishes to address the council in the public forum? Hearing none, I'm going to declare the public forum closed, and we will move to communications from the mayor, starting with C33.
C33. Dean J. Mazzarella, Mayor. request an appropriation of $1,846,172 to be made to the school department expense account, the same amount to be raised by fiscal year 2021 revenue regarding state aid estimate for tax rate setting purposes.
C-33 is referred to the Chairman of Finance.
Thank you, Mr. President. First time on the calendar, regular course.
Very well. C-33 is given regular course. Moving on to C-34.
C-34, Dean J. Mazzarella, Mayor, request of appropriation of $220,534 be made to the school department expense account, the same amount to be raised by fiscal year 2021 revenue regarding estimate fiscal year 2021 E-rate revenue.
C-34 is referred to the Chairman of Finance.
Thank you, Mr. President. First time on the calendar, regular course.
C-34 has been given regular course. C-35.
C-35, Dean J. Mazzarella, Mayor, request an appropriation of $25,000 be made to the landfill expense account, the same amount to be transferred from the stabilization fund regarding landfill repairs.
C-35 is referred to the Chairman of Finance.
Time on the calendar, regular course.
C-35 has been given regular course. Moving on to C-36.
C-36, Dean J. Mazzarella, Mayor, request an appropriation of $16,000 be made to the Police Department Capital Outlay Expense Account, the same amount to be transferred from the Stabilization Fund regarding boiler replacement.
C-36 is referred to the Chairman of Finance.
Mr. President, first time on the calendar, regular course.
Very well. C-36 has been given regular course. C-37.
C-37, Dean J. Mazzarella, Mayor, request an appropriation of $57,463 be made to the Cemetery Capital Outlay Account, the same amount to be transferred from the Cemetery Perpetual Care Income Account regarding cemetery truck.
C-37 is referred to the Chairman of Finance.
Once again, Mr. President, first time on the calendar, regular course.
C-37 is given regular course. Moving on to communications and C-38.
C-38, Dean J. Mazzarella, Mayor, request that Cheryl Canado be exempt from the provisions of Mass General Law, Chapter 268A, 20B, conflict of interest regarding election work.
C-38 is referred to the Chairwoman of Ways and Means.
Thank you, Mr. President. First time on the agenda, regular course.
Very well. C-38 has been given regular course. We'll now move on to petitions. First time on the agenda, starting with 21-21.
21-21, Pauline Cormier, Ward 2 Councilor, on behalf of residents of Johnny Appleseed Lane in the city of Leominster, respectfully request the installation of street lights, specifically the area of the home number 172 Johnny Appleseed Lane.
21-21 is referred to the Chairwoman of Public Service.
Thank you, Mr. President. Regular course with referrals to the mayor's office and to the DPW.
Very well. 21-21 has been given regular course with a referral to the mayor's office and to the DPW. Moving on to 22-21.
22-21, Mark C. Bedanza, Ward 4 Councilor, and David R. Cormier, Ward 3 Councilor, request to amend Section 2-14 of Article 3 of the revised ordinances for City of Leominster as follows. By deleting, all meetings of the council shall be held in the municipal building. In the event of a public emergency or other condition which renders it impossible for the council to hold any meeting in the city hall, the council will hold a meeting at the Leominster High School, in substituting in its place the following language therein. All meetings of the council shall be held in the municipal building. In the event of a public emergency or other condition which renders it impossible for the council to hold any meeting in the city hall, the council shall be permitted to conduct its meetings at the Emergency Management Operations Center or the Leominster High School.
22-21 is referred to the Chairman of Legal Affairs. Councilor Dombrowski?
Sorry about that. I had you on mute. Thank you, Mr. President. Regular course on 22-21.
Very well. 22-21 has been given regular course. Moving on to matters before the City Council, starting with the City of Leominster Financial Report. Is the Chairman of Finance ready to report?
Yes, Mr. President, we started the fiscal year on July 1st, 2020 with $14,189,150 $52.27. We had free cash from FY19 as well as interest so far year to date, which totals $7,416,302.19. Considering if we spent all of the appropriations through this evening and that are on the agenda for the first time, we will have spent $1,966,030 with a balance of $19,639,425.46, and that is the financial report.
Very well. Any questions on the financial report? Okay, moving on to finance and starting with C28 is the chairman ready to report.
Yes, Mr. President, C-28, Dean J. Mazzarella, Mayor, request an appropriation of $6,000 be made to the emergency management expense account, the same amount to be transferred from the stabilization fund. This is regarding the completion of removal of underground storage tank. We do have a letter here dated October 15th, 2020 from Jim LeBlanc, the Director of the Emergency, regarding the underground storage tank fill appropriation. I'll read it very quickly. We are requesting an appropriation amount of $6,600 to complete the underground storage tank project here at Emergency Management by filling the tank with a concrete slurry at a cost of $5,100. When the building was at 37 Street, we were made aware of a 1,000-gallon fuel oil storage tank under the floor in the truck bay. At the time, it was determined that the tank had 4,200 gallons of oil in it. A 21E was performed at the request of the health department, and the report determined that the area around and under the tank to be clean. We have now completed the first phase and make the tank and the surrounding area environmentally safe to ensure that there are no issues in the future. If this 1,000-gallon tank should rust, it could compromise the entire truck room floor. The original quote from an environmental company came in at $19,000. We spoke with McKenzie Engineering, and they gave us the go-ahead to contract out the filling of the tank ourselves, which is the quote for $1,500. So with the $5,100 plus the $1,500 equaling a total of $6,600, we are saving the city about $12,000 to finish this project. We appreciate your time and consideration to this request. I know in all the years I've been around here, I have heard about this tank, and that, one day there would have to be something that would have to be done with it so that, we would not have any problems. And I think I've known for quite some time that eventually this would be on the radar to be taken care of. So I certainly have no issues with this expenditure. I know a lot of work has been done down there by a lot of the volunteers and have saved us a lot of money, in the past, and the building is in great shape, and we need to help out, we can. Not everything can be done volunteer. So obviously this has to be mitigated, and I support the appropriation, and I'll ask that you, members of my committee, Mr. President.
Yes, of course. Councilor Pauline Cormier
I agree.
and Councilor Angelini.
I agree as well, and I'd also like to acknowledge that the fine work they did save the taxpayers north of $6,000 in this project. So my thanks go out to the folks here at Emergency Management. And
Very well.
Yes, I'm in favor.
You've heard the unanimous recommendation of the Finance Committee to grant C-28. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, this will be by roll call. Councilor Frida?
Yay.
Councilor Dombrowski?
Yay.
Councilor Shalfo Zephyr?
Yay.
Councilor Feckley?
Yay.
Councilor Angelini?
Yay.
Councilor Hardinger?
Yay.
Councilor Pauline Cormier?
Yay.
Councilor David Cormier?
Yay.
I shall be recorded as yay by a vote of 9-0. C-28 is granted. Does the chairman have an order?
Yes, Mr. President, ordered that the sum of $6,600 be appropriated to the emergency management expense account, the same amount to be transferred from the stabilization fund. Move for the adoption of the order.
You've heard the request for the adoption of the order. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of adopting the order, please say yay. Yay.
Yay.
Yay.
Those opposed? By a vote of 9-0, the order is adopted. Moving on to C-29. Is the chairman ready to report?
Yes, I am, Mr. President. C-29, Dean J. Mazzarella, Mayor, request an appropriation of $16,000 be made to the Police Department expense account, the same amount to be transferred from the stabilization fund. This is regarding repairs that need to be made at 210 Lancaster Street. So I did get an explanation on this today, and long story short, there was an infestation in the attic, and I believe up on the third floor, where some bats and pigeons had got up in there, and so the health department had to get involved, Chris Knuth, and obviously they had to mitigate the issue, and that's the cost for the city. It's about $16,000 for this problem. So, I'm not too tickled about it, and I've never been too crazy about the building in the first place, but we do own it, and we have to maintain it. So if my position requests that we grant C-29, and I will ask you to poll members of my committee, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Councilor Pauline Cormier
I agree.
and Councilor Angelini.
I agree with the appropriation.
You've heard the unanimous recommendation of the Finance Committee to grant C-29. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, this will be by roll call. Councilor Frida?
Yay.
Councilor Dombrowski?
Yay.
Councilor Shalfo Zephyr?
Yay.
Councilor Feckley?
Yay.
Councilor Angelini?
Yay.
Councilor Ottinger?
Yay.
Councilor Pauline Cormier?
Yay.
And Councilor David Cormier.
Yay.
I shall be recorded as yay. By a vote of 9-0, C-29 is granted. Does the chairman have an order?
Yes, Mr. President. Ordered that the sum of $16,000 be appropriated to the police department expense account, the same amount to be transferred from the stabilization fund. Move for the adoption of the order.
You've heard the request for the adoption of the order. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of adopting the order, please say yay. Yay.
Yay.
Yay.
Those opposed? By a vote of 9-0, the order is adopted. Moving on to legal affairs, Madam Vice President, I'm going to send 1721 back to you.
Thank you, Mr. President. 1721 is referred to the Chairman of Legal Affairs.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Petition 17-21, Stephen Fraticelli of Fraticelli Oil Company. Request to amend flammable from 335,000 gallons, 575,000 gallons of flammable liquids at 239 Litchfield Street. My recommendation is for further time, and we need to vote to extend the public hearing to November 23rd, 2020 at 6:00 p.m.
Very well. All right. So we need a vote to extend the public hearing on 1721 to November 23rd, 2020 at 6:30 p.m. All in support, please say yay. Yay.
Yay.
Yay.
Any opposed? The public hearing has been set.
And let the record reflect by a vote of 8-0.
8-0.
Myself, Mark Bedanza, recused. Thank you, Madam Vice President.
welcome.
Moving on to C-32. Is the chairman ready to report?
I am, Mr. President. Communication 32, Dean J. Mazzarella, Mayor. Request the City Council review and accept the water supply and development agreement between the City of Leominster and 702 LLC. I believe we're still waiting for the referral from the Department of Public Works. I would ask for further time on this and ask you to poll my.
Very well. Councilor Shalfo Zephyr
I agree with that.
and Councilor David Cormier.
I also agree.
You've heard the EMS recommendation of the Legal Affairs Committee to grant C-32 further time. Is there any additional discussion? I would just mention before we vote for further time that I did have a conversation with the mayor about this, and the applicant would appreciate any questions any councilors have in advance of the next meeting. That being said, any additional discussion? Okay, all those in favor of granting C-32 further time, please say yay. Yay.
Yay.
Yay.
Anyone opposed? By a vote of 9-0, C-32 is given further time. Moving on to Ways and Means, starting with the appointment of Dean Valier to the Planning Board. Is the chairwoman ready to report?
I am, Mr. President. This is a measure confirming the mayor's appointment of Dean Valier to the position of the Planning Board, term to expire 4/15/2025. We had Attorney Valier on the line this evening, and we interviewed him. As many of you know, all of you know actually, Attorney Valier has been an active practicing attorney in the city of Leominster for many, many years. And one of the fields that he practices is real estate. So he is very learned in that particular arena. But even considering that, he realizes that there is quite a bit to learn when it comes to the planning board, the city ordinances, rules and regulations, and he's very willing and has already started to review the ordinance codes and has taken some seminars. So I am very pleased to say that I would want to confirm the appointment of Dean Valier to the position of Planning Board and ask that you poll my committee.
Very well. Councilor Frida
I agree.
and Councilor Dombrowski.
I agree.
You've heard the unanimous recommendation of the Ways and Means Committee to confirm the appointment of Dean Valier to the Planning Board. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, this will be by roll call vote. Councilor Frida?
Yay.
Councilor Dombrowski?
Yay.
Councilor Shalfo Zephyr?
Yay.
Councilor Feckley?
Yay.
Councilor Angelini?
Yay.
Councilor Hardinger?
Yay.
Councilor Pauline Cormier?
Yay.
Councilor David Cormier?
Yay.
And I shall be recorded as yay. The confirmation of Dean Valier to the Planning Board is approved by a vote of 9-0. Moving on to a measure confirming the appointment of Jason Paré to the Planning Board. Is the chairwoman of Ways and Means ready to report?
I am, Mr. President. Similarly, we had Jason Paré before us this evening, virtually by phone. And I do have to admit that I did not have a lot of background on Mr. Paré and was wondering what he could contribute to the planning board. However, during his interview, he was very, very impressive. He has quite a bit of knowledge, he indicates, regarding GIS mapping. He is a technical writer, which could come into play and be very beneficial to helping with the city ordinance book. He has 10 years of experience with quality assurance, and he also realizes what a time commitment this is and how much education he'll need. He's already attended planning board meetings and conferences. So I was very impressed with his interview, and therefore I would recommend that he be appointed to the planning board with a term to expire 4/15/2025, and I would ask you to poll my committee.
Very well. Councilor Claire Frida?
I agree. And can we also, Mr. President, mute some of this background noise? I mean, it's awful. I can barely hear Councilor.
I don't know where that, Madam Clerk, do you have any idea where that's all coming from?
Councilor Pauline Cormier, just so you know, I had to mute you because it was your mic.
Okay. All right. Sorry about that, Councilor Frida. You're in support of Mr. Paray's confirmation. Thank you. Councilor Dombrowski.
I'm in support.
Okay, so you've heard the unanimous recommendation of the Ways and Means Committee to confirm the appointment of Jason Paré to the Planning Board. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, this will be by roll call. Councilor Frida?
Yay.
Councilor Dombrowski?
Yay.
Councilor Shalfo Zephyr,
Yay.
Councilor Feckley,
Yay.
Councilor Angelini,
Yay.
Councilor Arndinger,
Yay.
Councilor Pauline Cormier,
Yay.
Councilor David Cormier.
Yay.
That shall be recorded as yea by a vote of 9-0. Confirmation, the appointment of Jason Parry to the planning board has been confirmed. Madam Chairwoman, do you want to take the appointments of Henry Fry and Virginia Tossi in block?
Yes, that'll be fine.
Okay, if you'll,
So we have two appointments. Measure confirming the mayor's appointment of Henry Fry to the position of Board of Appeals, term to expire 4/15/2023, and a measure confirming the mayor's appointment of Virginia Tossi to the position of the Housing Authority, term to expire 4/15/2025. So these were on our calendar last time. We further timed them, knowing that we were going to have quite a long hearing with Fraticelli this evening, which played out to be true. So we further timed them to November 23rd, interviews on November 23rd, our next meeting. And so my recommendation would be further time again. And I'd
Very
ask
well.
you so much.
and Madam Clerk, that those hearings will be conducted at 6:45.
6:45 and 6:50, yes.
Okay. Okay, maybe could we schedule them both at 6:45?
Absolutely, no problem.
That way there, if, God forbid, one doesn't show up, or if it goes quickly, then we can move right along.
Sure.
All right, so if that's okay with you, Madam Chairwoman, the recommendation
That's
of,
fine.
I'll check with your committee.
Mhm.
First, Council Frida
I agree.
and Council Dombrowski.
I agree.
Unanimous recommendation of the Ways and Means Committee is to grant the appointments of Henry Fry to the Board of Appeals and Virginia Tossi to the Housing Authority to 11/23 at 6:45 p.m. for interviews. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of granting those appointments for the time, please say yay.
Yay.
Anyone opposed? By a vote of 9-0, the appointments of Henry Fry and Virginia Tossi are given further time till 11/23 at 6:45 p.m. Moving on to C30, is the chairwoman ready to report?
I am, Mr. President. C30, Dean J. Mazzarella, Mayor. Request that Nicole LaPlante be exempt from the provisions of Mass General Law, Chapter 268A, 20B, Conflict of Interest, regarding election work. So this was on our calendar last time, and we brought it through for regular course. So my recommendation would be to approve the exemption, and I'll ask you to hold my committee.
Very well. Councilor Frida?
I agree, but I think it's, was this for the past election?
Madam Clerk, can you answer Councilor Frida's question on that?
No, I'm just collecting people who can count for further elections.
Okay.
Okay, all right. I agree anyway. So.
Okay, thank you, Councilor. Councilor Dombrowski?
I agree.
All right, so you've heard the unanimous recommendation of the Ways and Means Committee to grant the exemption of Nicole LaPlante for election work. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, this will be by roll call. Councilor Frida?
Yay.
Councilor Dombrowski?
Yay.
Councilor Shalfo Zephyr?
Yay.
Councilor Feckley?
Yay.
Councilor Angelini?
Yay.
Councilor Arndinger?
Yay.
Councilor Pauline Cormier?
Yay.
Councilor David Cormier?
Yay.
I shall be recorded as yea. The exemption for Nicole LaPlante for election work is granted by a vote of 9-0. Moving on to C31. Is the chairwoman ready to report?
I am, Mr. President. C31, Dean J. Mazzarella, Mayor. Request the approval of CDBG-CV Budget Action Plan. So we had this on the agenda last time, and we asked for a referral from the mayor's office. However, we did receive some information from Ellen Racine, who is the CDBG and Housing Rehab Director. My question was some information regarding the plan for using these funds. And Ellen writes, hello, as you are all aware, we previously received $272,508 for small business and gave out about 80 grants. The next round of money that is available to us is $482,977. This allocation of money cannot have any duplication, therefore we are throwing around new ideas. The Community Development Office had a public hearing last Friday, which is a requirement to apply for this funding. The funding letter came in as that, $755,485 total. HUD is stating this requires an additional action plan / budget for this funding of money. So since I bring the budget action plan to you every year, I felt like this was necessary. We ask that you approve this additional funding so hopefully we can help more people with either homeless needs or rental assistance ideas so far. HUD states we must spend this funding to prepare for, and respond to the coronavirus. Thank you, Ellen Racine, CDBG and Housing Rehab Director. So this is money that we have been given to use for the obviously the coronavirus pandemic, and my recommendation would be that we accept it, and I would ask you to poll my committee.
Very well, Councilor Frida.
I agree. This is pretty well regulated as to how it can be spent.
Very well, thank you, Councilor. Councilor Dombrowski.
I agree as well.
You've heard the unanimous recommendation of the Ways and Means Committee to grant C-31. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, this will be by roll call. Councilor Frida.
Yay.
Councilor Dombrowski.
Yay.
Councilor Shalfo Zephyr.
Yay.
Councilor Feckley.
Yay.
Councilor Angelini.
Yay.
Councilor Ottinger.
Yay.
Councilor Pauline Cormier.
Yay.
Councilor David Cormier.
Yay.
That shall be recorded as yay by a vote of 9-0. C-31 is granted. Moving on to 20-21, is the Chairwoman of Ways and Means ready to report?
I am, Mr. President. 2021, Claire M. Frida, Councilor at Large. Request that the City Council amend Rule Number 1 of the Leominster City Council Rules and Procedures entitled Meetings by adding the following after the second paragraph that refers to public emergency. In the event that in-person meetings are rendered impossible or a public safety issue, all meetings and public hearings will be held virtually by Zoom, Google, or other virtual means in order to provide clear transparency to the public and the media. What I would like to do, Mr. President, if this is acceptable to you, would be to have the petitioner address this petition before I make any recommendation.
That's fine, sure.
Okay. Councilor Frida?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I probably should have referred to the first part of the rule, which changed over 20 years ago. We showed up, the council showed up for a council meeting at City Hall, as we normally did at one time. And there was a severe hazmat situation in the parking lot. Former Councilor Marchand was the president at the time and wanted to go directly to the high school to have a meeting, and found out it wasn't possible to do that because there was no posting and no provisions to do that. So immediately after, the recommendation was made to change the rule and add Leominster High School to the process so that we would have an alternative if anything ever happened at City Hall. I think we all learn from things that happen to us and happen to the city that are new, and we have to react to them. We all have constituents that call us pretty regularly, and our job pretty much is to deal with stop signs, speeding, noise issues, complaints. We as council as a large hear from everybody, including all the ward council constituents as well. I have gotten a number of requests and questions as to why we're not we're not on Zoom, or some visual possibility for people to be able to watch us. They are concerned because we don't always identify ourselves. They don't know who's talking. Tonight was a perfect example of a hearing that everybody renders pretty serious with the Fraticelli oil. Maps were given. We're all looking at them individually. They should be able to be put up on a slide so that the public can see what we're talking about, and we should be able to look at those. I don't think anybody thought that we'd be this far into 6 months, 7 months with no end in sight to possibly meeting publicly back in person again. So I felt it was pretty important that we get back on track. I know the probably the biggest amount of calls that I got was during the budget hearing and after the budget hearing, just because people are used to tuning in. And with the financial conditions this year, people really were concerned and wanted to be able to see us in action and not watch a flag waving on LATV with our voices. So the rule to me, would sort of help a little bit. And I know we had a meeting with the Councilors Association 2 weeks ago with Attorney General Healy, and she is really pushing this back. This is where I put up the clear transparency to the public and the media. And she made it very clear that as elected officials, our responsibility is to provide as much transparency to the public and the media, and to offer as much information as we can while we govern in the city. So that just reinforced what I've been concerned about for a few months, and would like to see us get into, at least for the time being. Just about every single meeting that I have is on Zoom, and that's 10, 12, 15 of them. And I think everybody's pretty much in sync with doing Zoom meetings now. The clerk feels that it'd be very simple to be able to do that, picking up from the phone possibility. So I'm really concerned, and this way it would give everybody an opportunity to vote according to their constituent request, or whether they're hearing from anybody, or to at least have the discussion about it. And I do think, looking at the petition that is on tonight for the next time, I think that should be amended, and we should have them to be consistent, and probably add emergency management to this petition. So that's my position on this, and that was my reason for putting this petition in. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Frida. So that kind of leads into what my recommendation might be. I mean, we seem to have kind of dueling petitions here. I can see the benefits of both, and I'm wondering if we gave 2021 further time, we could possibly manage that, putting them both together, so that at some point, say that again, I'm sorry.
I was just, so that I didn't mean to interrupt you. I'll wait till you're done.
Okay, so that at some point, if we did need to go Zoom or Google, I mean, I would be supportive of that, but I would also be supportive of having a live meeting at the Emergency Management Center in the amphitheater, which would give us, more than enough space to be safe. So my recommendation on this, I believe, is going to be further time, Mr. President. I believe that the petitioner, you're going to call my committee, so the petitioner would be able to comment anyway.
Okay, so the recommendation of the Chair of Ways and Means is further time for 20-21. Councilor Frida, your position on that?
Actually, I disagree. I don't feel that the two petitions are dueling petitions. The petition being presented tonight for the first time is clearly for in-person. This is carrying it, this is to change it to have Zoom now. I would like to see this on by the time we get to the tax classification, and that's right around the corner. I think people need to hear and see what we're talking about when it comes to tax classifications and for the budget that the state is putting together. I don't see why giving this further time is even necessary. I think if we add to the other or we don't. I mean, that was just my suggestion. But if the idea is, well, we won't talk about the other petition yet. But I'm going to just respectfully disagree. I think we could do this tonight with no problem. I don't see why we need further time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Frida. Councilor Dombrowski?
I think further time is reasonable.
All right, so the majority recommendation of the Ways and Means Committee on 20-21 is for further time. Is there any discussion on the floor? Hearing none, I'll do this by roll call. Councilor Frida?
Nay.
Councilor Dombrowski?
Yay.
Councilor Shalfo Zephyr?
Yay.
Councilor Feckley?
Yay.
Councilor Angelini?
Yay.
Councilor Ardinger?
Yay.
Councilor Pauline Cormier?
Yay.
Councilor David Cormier?
Yay.
And I shall be recorded as yea by a vote of 8-1. 20-21 is given further time. Moving on to new business, the clerk informs me that 21-21 requires a public hearing, and she has suggested 11/23 at 6:44 p.m. And that petition was referred to, I believe, Legal Affairs, correct? Councilor Dombrowski, is that okay with you?
No, public service.
Oh, public service, I'm sorry. Councilor Frida, is that okay with you?
I'm trying to turn back 20, what is it?
21-21.
Which is what, the street light?
The emergency management being added to an emergency meeting location.
I'm sorry, Councilor Badins, it's 22-21.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Legal Affairs because it's an ordinance.
Okay. Sorry for that.
22-21 would be legal.
Right,
affairs.
that is the correct petition number.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, that hearing time is fine.
Okay, all right. That is Legal Affairs, I'm sorry. And I'll check with the clerk, Council Shalfo Zephyr.
Sorry. Yes, I'm fine with that.
And Councilor Cormier, David Cormier.
I'm okay with that as well.
CMS recommendation of Legal Affairs is to provide a hearing date for 22-21 at 6:44 on 11/23. Any further discussion? All those in favor of that hearing time for 22-21, please say yay. Yay.
Yay.
Anyone opposed? By a vote of 9-0, there's a hearing set up for 22-21 on November 23rd at 6:44 p.m. I don't believe there is any other new business. Moving on to old business, is the Chairman of Legal Affairs ready to report on the second reading of an ordinance formerly 15-21?
I am, Mr. President. This is the second reading of an ordinance. Susan Shallow, R.C. Bedanza, Ward 4 Counselor. Request to amend Article 3, Division 2, Section 13-34. No parking on certain streets of the amended ordinances of the City of Leominster to add no parking along the side of Chestnut Street for cars heading east, extending approximately 60 feet up Chestnut Street from the intersection of Chestnut Street and Pleasant Street. We adopted the first reading of the ordinance at the last meeting. My recommendation is to adopt the second reading of the ordinance. I'd ask you to poll my committee.
Council Shalfo Zephyr,
I agree.
and Council David Cormier.
I also agree.
We heard the unanimous recommendation of the Legal Affairs Committee to grant the second reading of the ordinance. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, by roll call, Councilor Frida,
Yay.
Councilor Dombrowski,
Yay.
Councilor Shalfo Zephyr,
Yay.
Councilor Feckley,
Yay.
Councilor Angelini,
Yay.
Councilor Ardinger,
Yay.
Councilor Pauline Cormier,
Yay.
Councilor David Cormier,
Yay.
and I shall be recorded as yea by a vote of 9-0. The second reading of the ordinance is granted. Moving on to the second reading of an ordinance formerly 16-21. Is the chairman ready to report?
I am, Mr. President. This is the second reading of an ordinance, petition 16-21. Mark C. Bedanza, Ward 4 Councilor, request to amend section 13-34 of the Leominster Revised Ordinance as follows. By adding a no parking zone on Adams Street, southerly side, beginning at the intersection with Cotton Street, then westerly to the intersection of Bowen Place. My recommendation is to adopt the second reading of the ordinance. I'd ask you to poll my committee.
Very well. Councilor Shalfo Zephyr
I agree.
and Councilor David Cormier.
I also agree.
You hear the unanimous recommendation of the Legal Affairs Committee to grant the second reading of the ordinance formerly 16-21. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, this will be by roll call. Councilor Frida,
Yay.
Councilor Dombrowski,
Yay.
Councilor Shalfo Zephyr,
Yay.
Councilor Feckley,
Yay.
Councilor Angelini,
Yay.
Councilor Ardinger,
Yay.
Councilor Pauline Cormier,
Yay.
Councilor David Cormier.
Yay.
And I shall be recorded as yea by a vote of 9-0. The second reading of the ordinance is granted. Moving on to community calendar. Does anybody have anything under the community calendar?
Council President, I just
Yes.
wanted to remind the councilors to double check their email regarding the Veterans Day events. They ended up hitting capacity with the new governor's order, so some people were uninvited just to make sure that they stay within those parameters to stay safe for COVID. So please just double check that, and it will be broadcast on TV.
Very well. Thank you, Madam Clerk, and thank you, Madam Clerk, and your staff and your election workers for a fine job this past election. I know it was some trying circumstances and a historic election, and by all measures, you did a wonderful job.
Thank you.
Anything else on the community calendar? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make that motion, Council David.
Council Shalfo Zephyr seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? By a vote of 9-0, we are adjourned. Thank you very much, everybody, for your cooperation. Have a wonderful evening.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Aye.